Do you look at the...
Alright, peace y'all, peace. So in this video I'm going to be talking about the life and times of Rick James. Now, Rick James has been highly requested by a lot of you guys, and I wanted to take some time to really understand his story, you know, and get the facts. So I took a few days and dedicated my time to actually read his autobiography, which I must say is a great read if you haven't read it. After reading this book, I gotta say Rick James was a very interesting individual, very interesting, and he definitely did make an impact on hip-hop today. You know, a lot of the rappers that we know, such as LL Cool J, Big Daddy Kane, MC Hammer.
You can't touch this. You can't touch this.
Slam, you was the coldest cat. Get your swag back, daddy. Where your focus at? Gotta admit it, little.
All of these guys had sampled Rick James' music and made a very huge impact on hip-hop today, all right? So like I always do with these videos, I'm going to be very respectful to the friends and family of Rick James, all right? Rick James was born February 1st, 1948 in Buffalo, New York. His mother, Mabel Johnson, and his father, James Johnson, had 8 children, all right? Now, after Rick's father left, his mother, she moved her and her 8 children to stay at Willis Park Projects in Buffalo, New York, all right, where she would have to run numbers for the Buffalo crime family to feed her children. Now, the Buffalo crime family actually had a lot to do with Rick James' career later on down the line, and I'm going to get into details of that as well too. Now, Rick's mother would see early on that Rick had a passion for music, so she would actually take him to the local clubs with her while she ran her numbers, all right? He would often watch a lot of artists such as Etta James and Bobby Blue Band and others perform, right? And he actually became more intrigued with their performances, all right, at a very young age. Okay, now Rick James actually blamed a lot of his sexual nature that he put in his music on the fact that at 11 years old, his babysitter actually forced herself on him, all right? And this would be the cause to Rick James actually rebelling towards his elders, all right, as well, you know, as his teachers, all right, when he was in school, all right? Rick had actually went to Catholic school at a very young age, and he didn't really find interest in school, but he became more intrigued with music, okay? Now, after being kicked out of Catholic school for confessing to a priest, okay, he was enrolled in Bennett High, where he actually later would drop out in the 10th grade at age 15, okay? He felt that he wanted to do music, so he just left school and ran the streets, all right? Now, at the age of 15, okay, Rick James actually, like I said, ran the street with a lot of pimps and hustlers, okay? And during his time, he actually became hooked on heroin, all right? This was the early 50s, all right? So, you know, a lot of the heroin was heavy around this time, okay? Now, he would go on to meet a guy by the name of Brother Malcolm, okay? Now, Brother Malcolm was actually a positive brother that, pushed Rick James in a positive direction, all right, and became his mentor and tried to steer Rick James in the right direction. Told him that the guys that he was hanging out with was no good. He even invited him to a club that they had that preached a lot of African culture, and Rick actually joined the club. All right, but Rick kind of stayed away from it due to a certain event that took place, basically where some Caucasian guys threatened him. Okay, and Rick wanted to defend himself and the females that were involved in the group, but Brother Malcolm told him to stand down. So Rick James kind of just separated himself from that group from then on. All right, now Brother Malcolm had actually told Rick James to enroll in the Navy in order to avoid getting sent to Vietnam. All right, this was the time the Vietnam War was actually going around, and Rick James actually did that. Okay, but when he enrolled in the Navy, he realized that he couldn't handle the pressure, all right, of being treated like crap. So he actually went AWOL and left. Okay, now after going AWOL in the Navy, he ventured out and found his way on the music scene in Toronto, Canada, where he would meet the acts of Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. And they actually started a group by the name of Minor Birds. Okay, now this group Minor Birds was very popular in the mid-'60s. Okay, they actually had some good songs. They made songs such as the Minor Bird, It's My Time, Go On and Cry, I'll Wait Forever, and also I Got You. Okay, but they did pretty good. These songs that they put out actually got them a deal with Motown Records. Okay, now the way that they actually got the deal with Motown, they actually traveled to Detroit, Michigan to audition for Barry Gordy. Like I told you guys before, it's a totally different game now. Back then you could just go up to a label and just audition and get a record deal, right? But these days you kind of have to like pay your dues. But they went up to audition for Barry Gordy at Motown, and he signed the Minor Birds. All right. Now, at this time, Rick James had became really good friends with Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. All right. They were all inseparable. All right, being that they also had a common interest in making music. All right, but Marvin and Stevie was actually financially stable. Therefore, as Rick, he was still broke, until the advance came in. All right, now, Rick would call a guy by the name of Morty Shellman, all right, every week, okay, just to get his advance, because like I said, he was broke. He was still on the streets doing street stuff, but he would call a guy by the name of Morley Shellman every week, okay? And Morley Shellman would actually brush him off and tell him, yeah, the check is coming next week, and Rick would be like, all right, I'm going to wait till next week. Next week would come, the check still didn't come. So Rick kind of got upset. He basically got upset, and he threatened the guy over the phone. Now, when he did this, he didn't realize that Morley knew all of his business about him going AWOL. All right. Then Rick got that call the next day saying that Motown couldn't sign the Minor Birds anymore. He was dropped because of the fact that he was a fugitive for going AWOL. All right. So Rick actually turned himself in and spent 6 months in the Brooklyn Navy Yard prison. Now, his other two members of the Minor Birds group, Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, they actually went on and did their own thing, all right? And Rick was left alone, okay? Now, for 2 years, Rick was in and out of prison, okay, trying to stay afloat financially, dealing drugs and breaking into people's houses and stuff like that. Just a regular teenager trying to find his way. All right. Meanwhile, he was still pursuing his music career. All right. But at the age of 19, he actually got the gumption to move to L.A. and met up with a guy by the name of Eddie Singleton. Okay. Now, Eddie Singleton was actually Berry Gordy's nemesis. He was close with Berry Gordy at the time. All right. Now, Eddie actually invited Rick to live with him to focus on music. All right. He actually remembered him from back in the day when he was with the Minor Birds, and said, "Hey, I remember you," and invited Rick James to live with him. And he stayed with Eddie Singleton until, he got on his feet. Okay. Now, it was at Eddie's house where Rick James was actually introduced to the occult. Okay. It was here where he met a woman by the name of Pam Louise, okay, who considered herself to be a witch. All right. Now, Rick started dating her, and miraculously, his music career started taking off again. All right. Now, in his book, which is titled Glow, the woman Pam Louise was actually into astral projection and tarot cards. All right. And she also introduced Rick to using acid, along with Jim Morrison of The Doors. Okay. But as he was dealing with Pam, it seemed that Rick's financial ventures and his music career was going well. All right. While dealing with Pam. All right. He then met a guy by the name of Jay Sebring. Okay. Now, Jay Sebring, who was a millionaire for making hair products and also a celebrity hairstylist. All right. He would often loan Rick James loads of money to actually fund his music career and basically get him by while he was out in L.A. All right. Now, Jay Sebring was a gay guy, but he respected Rick James. All right. He never pushed up on Rick James, and Rick James wasn't, he wasn't going for it, but he respected him. He saw the passion that Rick James had to basically, do music. All right. So he helped him while he was out in L.A., basically. All right. Now, Jay Sebring invited Rick James to a Hollywood party, right, at his mansion. But the party didn't actually go as well as it was planned. All right. Rick actually stayed home that night due to the fact that he had a migraine. All right. Only to wake up the next day missing the party to see that Jay Sebring and 5 other people at this party were slain to death in what he would call a ritualistic slaying. All right. Now, the 5 people who would be Jay Sebring, okay, Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, Abigail Folgers, all right, who is the heiress of the coffee company Folgers, and Wojtek Frykowski, all right, who was very close with Roman Polanski at the time, and another person by the name of Stephen Parent. All right. Now, we all know that certain parts of LA, which we'll just say Hollywood, all right, has a very demonic energy around it. All right. So at this time, Rick was very nervous and scared to be involved in this type of lifestyle. Okay. In his book, he even admitted it, that it was a ritualistic slaying. Okay. So, this type of stuff actually went down during these times. All right. Out in LA. Okay. Now, Rick actually went on to continue his music career, and he put together a group which was called Salt and Pepper. All right. Now, not the rapper group Salt and Pepper, but he was actually the original group called Salt and Pepper, only because the simple fact is that he was the only black guy in the group, and the rest were all white. All right. And they put out the song Get Up and Dance. All right. That actually went #1 on Buffalo, New York radio. All right. Now, in his book, Rick James actually admitted, he was into astrology at this time. Okay. So with the money that he was making from selling drugs and, also Jay Sebring's help, he created his own label, which was called Move Records. All right. Now on this label here, he basically used the moon, right? Because like I said, he admitted that he was into astrology at this time. Okay, so Rick James was very hip to the spiritual side of things, and he understood that it took spirituality, okay, to make it. All right. Now, this was his own record label. Okay, now back in those days, it was very expensive, all right, to create a record label, but he had the money to do it. Okay, now I mentioned earlier in the video that the Buffalo crime families, right, would play a major part in his career. Now, the Buffalo crime family also were the ones in charge of his distribution, so that the records could get put out in mass distribution. Okay, so he was tied in with the mafia at a very young age. All right, so this kind of helped him elevate to that next level. And a lot of people at these record companies were unaware of how he got this money, but then when they found out that he was involved with these individuals, it kind of put some respect on his name in a sense. All right. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Rick James actually started that whole funk style. All right. People like Bootsy Collins actually followed along, George Clinton, Funkadelic. It took bits and pieces of their styles, but he kind of threw it on his own style, and it blew up. All right. He then changed the name of the group from Salt and Pepper to the Stone City Band. Okay. The Stone City Band is actually a ploy on getting high, basically. Okay. If people didn't know, Rick actually started the drug culture, all right, in music. All right. Before that, you didn't really hear too much of drugs being promoted in music until Rick James came along, right? You may have had other artists that would talk about it, but you wouldn't know. It was always metaphoric, all right? But when he started this group, which was called the Stone City Band, okay, he actually promoted the drug culture, okay? The group that he had before that was actually called White Cane. Okay, so he changed the name of the group maybe about 3 times, all right, until he came up with Stone City Band. Okay, and the record labels, they were disregarding that White Cane thing, all right, but they let him put it out anyway. All right, now after he created the Stone City Band, Rick actually moved back in with his mother and wrote the songs that we all know today, which was Mary Jane, You and I, and also the song Hollywood. All right, that would be featured on his debut album, Come and Get It. Okay, now Come and Get It would actually go on to sell 2 million copies. All right, but at this time, Rick was still independent, and he needed a major record deal to get him further, okay, across the masses. All right, now, with his struggles of trying to get signed, okay, he was trying to get signed so hard, but everybody kept closing the door on him, things wasn't working, all right. He became depressed and contemplated suicide, all right, due to the fact of him constantly failing at not getting signed, all right. But he went back to Motown to shop his music and caught wind of a guy by the name of Jeffrey Bowen. Okay, now Jeffrey Bowen actually took Rick's demo and played it for Berry Gordy. Okay, and he actually liked it. All right, now Berry Gordy was familiar with Rick James from before when he was signed to Motown through the Minor Birds, right? But he wasn't aware that Rick had created this new sound, this new funk sound that no one heard. So they were very excited to sign Rick James to Motown. And he actually got signed, all right, to Motown for $850,000, all right. Now, Rick was actually happy to be back on Motown with his friends Marvin and Stevie, all right. But now he was on Motown as a solo artist rather than being in the group, all right. But like I said, Rick was very much a trendsetter, okay, for a lot of artists. Okay, he was putting out so many hits at this time. You know, a lot of these guys copied his style. Even Marvin and Stevie kind of copied his style. But Rick James would go on to create albums such as Come and Get It, Bustin' Out of L7, and Fire It Up. All right, Garden of Love. Garden of Love actually flopped. Okay, it didn't do too well, but he actually redeemed himself with the album Street Songs. Okay, now Street Songs was a very popular album. I remember having this album as a kid. Okay, but this was a very popular album. This put Rick James in mainstream success, right, where everybody saw him. Okay, millions and millions of people saw Rick James after this album dropped. Okay, and the only reason why it was because of this one song, which was titled Super Freak. All right, we all know this to be a classic, right? A lot of people have sampled this song. All right, but the funny thing about this song was that Rick James actually wrote this song, okay, at 3 a.m. All right, now we all know what happens at 3 a.m. Okay, these are witching hours, and with Rick James being familiar with occult practices, I'm pretty sure, okay, he knew exactly what he was doing, okay, in order for this song to be as big as it was. He just said it came to him, you know, and it was very hypnotic. He just played 4 chords, and the song just came to him. He didn't even write anything down. He just started singing, and it was an instant hit. Okay, how many of us can do that? Okay, he had some type of spiritual guidance to guide him through with that song. All right. Now, with all due respect, okay, Rick James admitted to being a chronic sex addict. All right, but I think he went overboard by actually courting Marvin Gaye's wife, Janice Gaye. Okay. Now, Janice and Marvin were actually going through hard times. All right, but Rick didn't care. All right, he invited Janice over, okay, to his place. All right, but when she got there, Rick said, "What's wrong, baby?" he asked. "The plane was about to take off in L.A. when someone brought me a bouquet of flowers," Janice said. "They were from Marvin. His note said, 'Have a good time.'" Rick James said, "You told him you were coming here?" She said, "No. We haven't spoken in weeks, but somehow he found out." It goes on to say, "Holding those flowers in my lap, I got paranoid, Rick. I fantasized he planted a bomb on the plane." It goes on to say, "Just about then, the phone rang. It was Marvin. He wanted to know why his wife was visiting me. I said it was because she and I were friends. He asked if we had been lovers. I lied and said no. Then he said he wanted to talk to Jan. They spoke for a long while. When the conversation was over, she said, 'I need to go back to L.A.' Rick James said, 'You just got here, honey.' She said, 'I know, Rick, but I don't want to get Marvin any more upset.' I didn't argue. Before she left, though, friends called and told me to turn on WBLK, the soul radio station. Marvin was on the air saying, 'I just want to say hello to my friend Rick James, who's hosting my wife, Janice, this weekend in Buffalo at his home. I want to wish them both the best, now and in the future.' He spoke in the sweetest tone you can imagine." Now, Rick James was on his high horse at this time. He was feeling himself. He had all of this power and success, and he felt that he could take Marvin Gaye's wife. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I thought this to be foul, but he did it anyway. All right? But Rick James was very egotistical. You know, he was very egotistical. But he had pure intentions. He just was very egotistical. Now, we all know this skit from Dave Chappelle, you know, with Prince and Rick James, you know, having beef, right? But Dave Chappelle made it into a joke. All right? If I watched, you know, after reading the story, and I watched that Chappelle show skit, it really ain't funny to me because, you know, Rick James actually felt that Prince was stealing his style, and initially Prince was stealing his style, all right? But the beef between them two actually ensued because Rick had brought his mom to a Hollywood party, right? And Prince was there. Now his mother, who was a huge fan of Prince at the time, who wasn't, she asked Prince for an autograph, and Prince actually curved Rick James' mom's. All right, now Rick was about to go and put hands on Prince, but Prince apologized before he could, go over there and handle his business. But ever since then, Rick never really liked Prince. All right, they really couldn't stand each other after that point. And Prince would go down to his shows and steal his little his little routines, and then go back and do the show, and made it seem like Rick James was copying Prince, but it was the other way around. And Rick James always resented Prince for that. You know what I'm saying? Now, after a while of Rick James actually making sexual music, he realized he needed to change his kind of style, right? He realized he needed to change his style when he saw 3 13-year-old girls at his shows, right? Sticking their tongue out and lifting their shirts. All right, now at this time, Rick James had his daughter Ty, who was 11 at the time, right? So the age difference is right there, So he kind of said it made him sick to see that 13-year-old girls was at his shows, lifting up their shirt and sticking out their tongue and gyrating, you know what I'm saying? And, that could have been his daughter, right? So he felt some kind of way and decided that he wanted to change at this time. Now, by 1986, he started to go downhill due to his extensive drug use, right? And he was eager to find answers. All right, now, when he signed up for an AA meeting, his sponsor there actually referred him to a fortune teller, okay, who told Rick about his future. All right, now, this is something that I'm going to tell y'all in key factor. If you out there, if you claim to be a witch, or you practice witchcraft, or read tarot cards, or fortune telling, all right, I told you guys you got to be careful with this stuff. Now, I didn't know this, but you're not supposed to keep tarot cards in your house, right? But in Rick James' book, he actually spoke about this, on how he tested the so-called witch, all right, with questions to see if she was real. And in his book, it read, "The spirit voice had directed her to me. In her hand was a velvet package meant for me. The lady said, 'Do you know what's in the package?' She said, 'Yes,' I said, 'Tarot cards.' She said, 'You're right.' Rick James asked her, 'Where have you kept them?' She said, 'Buried in a quiet place.' The witch passed the first test. I knew tarot cards can't be properly read if you keep them in your home. It's too confusing. They require a shelter and quietude of Mother Earth." All right, so now when you going out there and you buying tarot cards and you keeping this stuff in your house, I tell y'all this all the time. Y'all got to be very careful with this stuff. People just pick up stuff and don't know what they doing, right? If you don't practice this, you don't know. Okay, you don't know. You just doing what somebody told you to do on YouTube, and you just, you thinking it's cool. All right, but this is why you inviting a lot of these spirits in your home and in your personal space, and it's causing confusion. All right, but when I read this part, I thought this was very important to point out to you guys, because I know a lot of people that practice this actually follow me and watch my videos. So if you are into tarot cards or whatever, do more research if you can, and just be very careful, y'all. All right. Now Rick was tired of playing the devil's game at this point, right? After he went to the fortune teller, and he tried to turn his life around to God, and he actually delivered an album to Warner, all right, that had, God-filled lyrics all in it. Now, I tell y'all this, right, all the time. These people that are in these executive positions, they don't really want to hear that type of music. They don't want to hear positive music, all right? But after him being dropped from Motown, he had to get a deal with Warner. Now, a guy by the name of Benny Medina, okay, who was head A&R, all right, we all know Benny Medina. from Will Smith and Quincy Jones. Benny Medina, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, is actually based off of Benny Medina's life story. All right. So Benny Medina, who was head of A&R at Warner Brothers at the time, actually told Rick that Warner Brothers didn't want this God-filled album. All right. They said that that's not Rick James. All right. Rick actually went on to say, when the music had played, he said one word, cool, before getting up to leave. Rick said, that's all you have to say? He said, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. 2 weeks passed before he called from L.A. Warner doesn't want that album, Benny said. That album is not Rick James. Rick James went on to say, what are you talking about, man? That album is Rick James. The Rick James who was on fire for the Lord. That's not the Rick James we signed and promised $850,000 an album. This is the album God wants me to make, Rick James said. Benny Medina went on to say, God isn't paying you, we are. And we don't intend to give you a cent if you don't give us some music we can sell. We didn't sign a gospel artist. We signed a secular artist. One of the sexiest secular artists who's ever sung. If you want to collect your advance, you're going to have to deliver secular music. Short of that, it's back to the legal wars. So Rick James tried to deliver a gospel album to Warner Brothers, and they told him no. They wanted that bull crap. So basically, Rick James had caved in, all right? And, you know, he basically decided to worship the devil until his dying days. He goes on to say, and yet I caved. I submitted to man, not to God. I wanted the money more than integrity. As much as I loathed Benny Medina, I submitted to his demands. In essence, I said, give me the check and I'll give you the music you want. Plain and simple, I sold out. So when you see this type of stuff in the music business, that's why I say all the time, it's not really the artists. It's these people in high positions that put out this garbage, right? We all know that artists have a hard time. They go through emotions. They write what they feel. But if they're going for a check, and this is the only way that they could provide for themselves, they have to submit to doing the bull crap. So I kind of understood where he went, you know what I'm saying, as far as with, you know, caving in and doing that stuff. But it didn't get crazy until, you know, further on down the line. He said, so as he's speaking to his friend, he went on to say, isn't gospel music a big business as well, an entire system of its own? Rick James said, I'm sure it is, but I didn't know it and chose not to learn it. I had a deal with Warner and wanted that Warner money. I already told you that I did. So it's not the system that did you in. You use the system's assistance that you honor your contract as an excuse to go out and get loaded again. Rick James said, damn right. It was either one thing or the other, heaven or hell. I could never get in heaven, not with what I done, so I chose hell, willingly. Free will is a moral effort, I said. It's a setup for the devil to grab your ass and keep you in his grip. I don't see it that way, his friend said. Rick James went on to basically say that he basically blatantly admitted to worshiping the devil. It says, wasn't even a close contest to think otherwise would be bullish. I was through bullishing myself. If I was meant to be Satan's servant, then I'd go ahead and worship the mother effer. Besides, Satan was offering what I wanted most, crack and pee. So, I mean, he kind of went out bad, you know, but he reaped the benefits, you know, of dealing with that. You know, he was in the movie Life with Eddie Murphy, the Chappelle Show. He actually won a Grammy for You Can't Touch This, which samples the song Super Freak, all right, by MC Hammer. All right, but in 1990, Rick James actually hit an all-time low when his wife invited a crackhead over, all right, to have a threesome, all right. Now, when the crackhead demanded money, you know, he told her no, all right, but she basically kicked his pregnant wife in the stomach, and Rick defended her, all right. Now, the lady called the cops on him and his wife, and they were both arrested, all right. Now, Rick James actually died August 6, 2004 from a heart failure. All right, now his autopsy found numerous drugs in the system, and he was 56 years old. But Rick James definitely made an impact, like I said, while he was here, and the music he created changed a lot of people's lives. All right, he did what a lot of people weren't able to do in a short period of time while he was here. All right, but yeah, y'all, man, just be very careful. You know, if you're dealing with music and stuff like that, I figured I want to tell you guys Rick James' story. And if you're interested in reading his book, the book is called Glow. It's a very good book, a very great read if you're into music and want to learn about the business. He talks a lot about the music business in there, and definitely a good read, y'all. Definitely a good read. So with that being said, y'all, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'm gonna be getting more videos for y'all, and yeah, peace.